Alright folks, it seems that a new bill could potentially block Visa and Mastercard censorship.
Our freedoms are under attack. Video games, books, paintings, films, music, and other creative works are legally considered forms of speech, and in the United States, expressive content, including artistic expression, are protected by the First Amendment. But it seems that credit card companies, banks, and payment processors feel that they are above these things. Now, in a key 2011 Supreme Court case, Brown versus the EMA, or Entertainment Merchants Association, the court ruled that video games are protected speech just like books or movies. This decision confirmed that the government cannot ban or restrict video games based on their content, but now we have to deal with feminist organizations such as Collective Shout nannying adults and going to credit card companies when companies like Valve do not listen to them and cave into their demands. They want our entertainment restricted, and that is why we need to sit here and fight back at every opportunity possible. And of course, we've been talking a lot about the video game industry recently, especially with something like Stop Killing Games, which doesn't necessarily have to do with the United States, but I think that it is still important. Everybody across the world discusses it because it is protecting us against the massive corporations in this industry.
I challenge you, Collective Shout. I challenge you to censor somebody who has enough money, enough resources like Tulsa King to bury you. Do you have the balls to do it?
Now, on top of having our purchases potentially ripped away from us because a company does not feel like supporting a game and its servers anymore, we also have to worry about content that features adult themes being completely removed from platforms regardless of where you are across the world. I have been talking a lot about this situation on the channel. It is something I am extremely passionate about, and I think everybody needs to be talking about, because I understand there are individuals out there who say, oh, they're just sex simulators. I don't particularly care about that, but censorship is a slippery slope. If you give companies an inch, they will take a mile, and it might be sex simulator games today, but in a week or a month or a year or a decade, it could just be any adult theme, gore, violence.
Don't forget LGBTQ, because don't forget, Anna Valens is now joining in. Yeah, it's going to be a fragile and uneasy alliance, folks. Yes, all of us, including the left, we may have aligned goals. However, what happens afterwards is another matter.
It's like The Witcher or Cyberpunk or Silent Hill removed from platforms, or not even being developed anymore because they are considered too risky for these major companies. And while I and many other people do not like the idea of government interference in our entertainment, it's really coming down to we need people to be protecting us. We need government officials to be discussing this situation, whether it is age verification on platforms like Spotify, or you have Microsoft requiring IDs, and YouTube even requiring you to input your ID if it's AI determines you could potentially be under the age of 18. They are taking a lot of very questionable moves right now, and they think they can get away with it. I, of course, like many other people, am going to sit here and fight back against these. And in the case of Stop Killing Games, I know a lot of people are very weary because it could involve a government, but ultimately we are left with very few options. And right now there is actually a bill under review that could prevent credit card companies from actually blocking adult games on Steam.
Okay, who's the name? James Lucas. Right now, I'm probably gonna add this. If any of you don't know, JTech TV, okay, I know it's not relevant, but I had to put this in. JTech TV just recently false copyright strike Klutz's King for a 2-year-old video, and the video was removed. You wanna know what JTech TV does? He go to Twitter, thank you at Team YouTube, yeah, celebrating false copyright strike, and Joe from Seattle copy him by saying, hey Team YouTube, look at this guy. See, do you see what he's done by false copyright striking people? I know it's not relevant, but sometimes, don't you think it's a bit odd that kind of thing happened while the censorship is still ongoing?
Adult games on Steam. It says earlier this month, Steam amended its publisher guidelines to prohibit content that may violate the rules set by credit card companies such as Visa and Mastercard. Dozens of adult games were soon purged from the platform. A group called Collective Shout later claimed responsibility, stating that it had pressured payment processors directly to take action after Steam failed to respond. Of course, they are doing this under the guise of protection. They are claiming that this is to protect women and girls girls and children, but ultimately it's not about protecting anybody, it's about controlling everybody. They do not care about protecting young girls or women, they care about making a profit. And of course, there is no consistent correlation between violence in video games causing violence in the real world. There is no consistent scientific evidence to back that up. They can make this claim, it is not proven.
Tell me something. If you think that there is violence in video games or violence against women, let me tell you my experience. My first mature rated game, House of the Dead, I was in preschool, okay? I was starting on preschool. Well, I was about to start preschool, and yet I wasn't desensitized to violence. And here's another one. Resident Evil 4, my second mature rated game. I was about 12 or 13 years old. How come I wasn't desensitized to violence during that time either? Think about that. Because my parents raised me well. And in return, I get to play those games.
They are going to push that narrative because normal individuals who do not play video games will hear about sex simulator games and objectifying women, and they might be afraid and they might say, oh, we support this decision, when really they do not have all of the information and all of the context, but they are trying to scare people into supporting them. And of course, that's not going to work with gamers because we know the truth even if they don't want to admit it. It says fans have since launched petitions and called credit card companies out directly in hopes of stopping future purges, but interestingly, a bill is already under review right now that concerns this very problem. Republican Senator Kevin Cramer introduced a bill into the congressional record on February 4th earlier this year before Steam had even amended its guidelines, which seeks to place restrictions on certain banks, credit unions, and payment card networks if they refuse to do business with a person who complies with the law. All of the content that is on Steam and itch.io that is being censored currently is legal content. It is ultimately protected. Even if you personally do not agree with the contents of these games, it is legal. And so they are really just, of course, saying we don't care about people's protections and people's freedoms. We just care about protecting our own brand and image. That's really what it boils down to here.
Yeah, that's a cowardly move. I'm certain, seriously, like I said, I'm going to keep bringing this up. Sooner or later, it's going to take one person with enough money, with enough resources to bury Collective Shout for good and force Visa and Mastercard to stop this whole censorship nonsense and also to abolish all those Online Safety Act at the UK.
That's really what it boils down to here. And if passed, the bill would protect against banks being able to impede otherwise lawful commerce and thereby achieving certain public policy goals. In other words, credit card companies would likely no longer be able to refuse service to developers as long as what they are selling is legal, which means that companies like Visa and Mastercard would no longer be able to demand storefronts such as Steam and Itch remove adult games due to pressure from political entities, which would be an amazing thing. Again, I know that when we're talking about government interference in our entertainment, people become very weary, but at this point, there are only so many things that could happen. I do not want all of my entertainment ripped away from me and censored due to political entities saying that it is bad and not actually giving people the full context and gaining support because of that. So I think that we do need to sit here and pay attention to this and actually give it our support. And of course, there are ways to voice directly your concerns to Visa and Mastercard. I've been talking about that quite a lot in a few videos. There are several threads and ones that I will link down below that talk about it, but they are required to have ethics phone lines so you can actually contact them and tell them basically what you're thinking and how you're feeling.
I also will link those threads in the description or in the pinned comment, whichever it is. I don't know what the bill is, but my main concern is the Screen Act, which has already been introduced. This bill, whatever this is, I don't know what's the name of the call. I think this one was about 22 days earlier, or in this case 22 days before the Screen Act. Chibi Reviews, did you know about this bill before that? I don't know if Chibi Reviews knows about this law. I hope he does. What's gonna happen afterwards? Now listen, first and foremost, Collective Shout, yippee-ki-yay, MF. Yeah, that's John McClane's quote. I'm certain you know what it means. Remember how quickly people forget all it takes to change one course of history is the will of a single man. Remember, Collective Shout, all it's going to take is one person with enough resources, money, mostly resources and money, to bury Collective Shout deep in the ground. And Collective Shout cannot dig back up because they're already buried good luck digging yourself back up. I think Collective Shout, even if it is 1000% cooked, it's probably gonna get increase until they're kaput. Finito.
Well done, Griffin. Now we got this airfield secured, we can get a foothold on this island and start pushing the Japanese back. We're through retreating, lad. America's back in this war.